All right, welcome everyone to another deep dive. And today we're going to be looking at
Yeah.
a pretty fascinating development in how large language models think.
Yeah.
And you actually sent this in the research notes in the paper called Training Large Language Models to Reason in a Continuous Latent Space.
Hmm.
And honestly, I was a little intimidated by that title at first, but
Substitute.
we're going to break it all down together and figure out
Right.
why this is such a big deal.
It is a fascinating development for sure. Um, it
Yeah.
really is about changing the way
Okay.
that LLMs reason,
Yeah.
moving kind of from a more language-based approach to something
Yeah.
that's much more efficient and flexible.
Gotcha. So to even understand this new approach called coconut,
Hmm.
we have to sort of start with how LLMs have traditionally been taught to reason.
Exactly.
Right. And that's where this whole chain of fear prompting comes in.
Exactly. So it's chain of thought or code.
Right.
You're basically asking the LLM to solve a problem
Okay.
and explain its reasoning step by step
Okay.
using human language.
Uh-huh.
The idea was that this would make the reasoning process more transparent
Gotcha.
and easier to understand.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But it turns out forcing LLMs to explain everything in words can be incredibly inefficient.
Right.
It's like when you're trying to explain something simple,
Right.
but you just end up using way more words than necessary just to make it sound coherent.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
That's exactly the problem the researchers highlight with Kotai,
Right.
is that a lot of the words generated are just for textual fluency,
Wow.
not for the actual reasoning itself. It's like
Yeah.
writing a whole paragraph
Right.
just to convey a simple mathematical operation.
Yeah, and that's where Coconut comes in. It says,
Right.
hey, let's ditch the language crutch
Right.
and move to this latent space
Mhm.
where we can represent meaning without needing all the wordy baggage.
Precisely. A latent space is a way to represent information in a continuous, multi-dimensional way.
Right.
Think of it like a map
Right.
where similar concepts are clustered together.
Gotcha. So instead of a long-winded explanation,
Yeah.
we get this concise representation in this latent space.
Mhm.
Okay, but how does that actually work within an LLM?
Well, in an LM, you have this thing called the last hidden state,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically a summary of everything the model has understood from the input text.
Okay.
In Coconut, this last hidden state becomes a continuous thought,
Okay.
a vector that encodes multiple potential next steps simultaneously.
Hold on, a vector?
Yeah.
Can you break that down a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah.
Imagine a vector as an arrow
Okay.
pointing in a specific direction.
Gotcha.
In this latent space, the direction and length of the vector represent the meaning and relationships between different concepts. So instead of a sequence of words,
Right.
you have a single compact representation that captures the essence of the thought.
Okay, that's starting to click for me. It's like having a mental map
Right.
where you can see all the possible routes at a glance instead of a list of directions
Yeah.
that forces you down one specific path.
Exactly. And this ability to represent multiple possibilities simultaneously
Right.
is where Coconut gets really interesting,
Okay.
because it allows for a type of reasoning that resembles breadth-first search, or BFS.
Now, I remember BFS from my
Right.
computer science days.
Yeah.
It's all about exploring all possible paths
Yeah.
from a starting point, right?
Yeah.
Like systematically searching every branch of a tree.
You got it.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that this BFS-like behavior emerges naturally in Coconut.
Yeah.
It wasn't explicitly programmed in.
Oh.
It just arose from this new way of representing and manipulating thoughts in the latent space.
So instead of blindly following one chain of thought,
Right.
like a mouse in a maze,
Yeah.
Coconut can explore multiple reasoning paths simultaneously.
And that's a huge advantage,
Gotcha.
especially for tasks involving planning and uncertainty.
Okay.
Think of it this way. Coconut's BFS capability
Mm-hmm.
is like having a drone scout all paths in the maze simultaneously,
Okay.
giving it a strategic advantage over traditional LLMs
Right.
that can only follow one path at a time.
Okay. That's a really powerful image.
Yeah.
It's like Coconut can think ahead,
Mm-hmm.
anticipate potential problems, and adjust its course accordingly.
Right.
But if all this reasoning is happening in this hidden, latent space,
Mm-hmm.
how do we even know if it's working correctly?
That's the challenge of interpretability with
Yeah.
Coconut.
Right.
These continuous thoughts aren't designed to be decoded back into human language,
Uh-huh.
so the reasoning process can appear like a black box.
Right, so we can't get a full transcript of the model's thoughts, but we
Right.
can maybe catch a few key phrases.
Precisely, and even those glimpses can be revealing.
Okay.
For instance,
Yeah.
in one example, the researchers decoded a continuous thought and discovered that it was representing multiple possible calculation paths for a math problem,
Wow.
all being considered simultaneously.
So it's like the model was weighing different options before committing to one,
Exactly.
which is kind of how
Right.
we humans might approach a complex problem.
Exactly. And that's what makes this research so intriguing.
Yeah.
It suggests that this latent reasoning might be more aligned with human cognition than we initially thought.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the model is developing its own internal language of thought,
Right.
which is not bound by the constraints of human language.
Okay, so we've got this more efficient, more flexible
Yeah.
way of reasoning happening in the latent space.
Hmm.
But how do you actually train an LLM to do this?
Right.
It's not like you can just give it a bunch of math problems and say, go think in vectors.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Training Coconut is one of the biggest challenges.
Okay.
And it requires a very specific approach.
Yeah.
Simply giving it questions and answers doesn't work.
Right.
It needs guidance to learn how to reason effectively in this latent space.
So how did the researchers crack this?
They developed a multi-stage training curriculum,
Okay.
and it's really quite clever.
Yeah.
The first stage actually starts with traditional COTI data.
Gotcha.
So the model gets familiar with language-based reasoning.
So it's like giving it the training wheels of language
Yes.
before letting it loose in the latent space.
Then they gradually start replacing those language-based steps with continuous thoughts.
Right.
The model still gets feedback on its overall performance,
Uh-huh.
so it learns to associate these continuous thoughts with achieving the correct answer,
Yeah.
even though it's no longer explicitly generating the intermediate steps in language.
So it's like they're slowly weaning it off its dependence on language
Precise.
and helping it to think more abstractly.
And this gradual transition seems to be crucial.
Okay.
They experimented with training Coconut directly on questions and answers without the initial COTI stage,
Right.
and it didn't perform well at all.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So it really needs that,
It needs that scaffolding,
Yeah.
that initial
that structure.
framework.
It's amazing to think that we might be able to train LLMs to reason in ways that are fundamentally different from how we think.
Yeah.
But if Coconut can already solve certain tasks better than traditional LLMs,
Right.
where does it go from here?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it leads us to some even more fascinating aspects of this research,
Okay.
which we'll explore further in our deep dive.
Fantastic.
You know, one of the things that really struck me about this whole Coconut approach
Yeah.
is that it challenges our assumptions about how LLMs learn and reason.
Right.
We've always thought of language as being central to intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
but this research suggests that maybe it's not the whole story.
That's a really profound point. It's like we're discovering a whole new form of intelligence,
Yeah.
one that operates in this abstract, latent space
Yeah.
beyond the constraints of human language.
And this raises all sorts of questions about the potential of LLMs.
Right.
If they can already outperform traditional models on certain tasks by reasoning in this new way,
Yeah.
what other capabilities might we be able to unlock?
Okay, before we get too carried away with the possibilities,
Mm.
let's dive a bit deeper into how Coconut actually excels at those tasks involving planning and uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned a data set called ProsQA,
Right.
which seems to be a key benchmark here.
ProsQA is specifically designed to test an LLM's ability to plan.
Okay.
Imagine giving the LLM a set of tools and asking it to build something,
Uh-huh.
but without explicit instructions on how to do it.
Okay.
That's essentially what ProsQA does. It presents the model with a goal and a set of actions it can take,
Gotcha.
and the model has to figure out the correct sequence of actions to achieve the goal.
So it's like a real-world problem-solving scenario.
Precisely.
So you have to think ahead and strategize to find the best solution.
And this is where Coconut's BFS-like behavior really shines.
Right.
Because it can explore multiple reasoning paths simultaneously.
Right.
It's less likely to get stuck in a dead end
Yeah.
or make an impulsive decision that leads it down the wrong path.
Can you give us a concrete example
Okay.
of how this plays out in ProsQA?
In one of the examples from the research, the
Yeah.
task was to navigate a knowledge graph.
Okay.
A knowledge graph is basically a network of interconnected concepts.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a map of ideas.
Right.
COTI, the traditional approach,
Mm-hmm.
tried to solve this task by generating a step-by-step path using language.
Okay.
but it ended up hallucinating a non-existent edge in the graph.
So it made up a connection that wasn't actually there,
Exactly.
which led it astray.
That's like following a map that has a mistake on it.
Right.
You might think you're going the right way,
Yeah.
but you'll end up getting lost.
Totally.
Coconut, on the other hand,
Right.
was able to explore multiple paths simultaneously and avoided that hallucination. It's like it could double-check the map and realize that the path Coty was suggesting didn't actually exist.
That's a really compelling example of how Coconut's more flexible approach
Yeah.
can lead to more accurate and reliable results. It's like
Uh-huh.
it's less prone to those cognitive biases that
Yeah.
can trip up traditional LLMs.
And that has huge implications for real-world applications.
Okay.
Imagine AI systems that can plan complex projects,
Yeah.
navigate unpredictable environments,
Right.
or even engage in more nuanced and strategic conversations,
Uh-huh.
all without making those costly mistakes that can arise from limited reasoning abilities.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
Yeah,
But I keep coming back to this question of interpretability.
sure.
If we're relying on these AI systems to make important decisions, don't we need to be able to understand how they're arriving at those decisions?
You're absolutely right. Interpretability is a crucial aspect of AI development,
Uh-huh.
especially as these systems become more powerful and integrated into our lives.
Right.
And while Coconut's latent reasoning can seem like a black box,
Yeah.
the researchers are actively working on ways to make it more transparent.
So what are some of the approaches they're exploring?
Well,
Is there any way to get a clearer picture
yeah.
of what's happening inside that latent space?
One promising avenue is to develop techniques for decoding continuous thoughts
Okay.
at specific points in the reasoning process.
Oh, sure.
It's like taking snapshots of the model's thinking,
Uh-huh.
even if we can't get a full continuous recording.
Right.
These snapshots might not reveal every detail,
Yeah.
but they can provide valuable insights into the factors the model is considering,
Okay.
the options it's weighing,
Right.
and the logic it's following.
That makes sense. It's like even if we can't see the entire thought process,
Right.
we can at least get glimpses of the key decision points.
Exactly. And even those glimpses can be incredibly revealing.
Okay.
For example, in one of the experiments,
Yeah.
the researchers decoded a continuous thought and found that it was representing multiple possible calculation paths for a math problem, all being considered simultaneously.
So it's like we can see that the model is engaging in this complex,
Yeah.
multifaceted reasoning,
Right.
even if we can't fully grasp every nuance.
Precisely. And that's an important step towards building trust and transparency in AI systems.
It's fascinating how Coconut seems to be pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible with LLMs.
Yeah.
We've talked about efficiency and flexibility
I
and
know that.
even this emergent breadth-first search behavior.
Hmm.
But I'm curious,
Yeah.
are there any limitations or potential downsides to this approach?
That's a great question.
Mhm.
And it's important to acknowledge that no approach is perfect.
Right.
One potential limitation of Coconut is that it requires a lot of data and computational power for training.
Okay.
Remember that multi-stage training curriculum we discussed earlier?
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
implementing that effectively can be quite resource intensive.
So it's not exactly a plug-and-play solution that anyone can easily implement.
Not at this stage, no.
Yeah.
It's still a very active area of research.
Right.
And there are ongoing efforts to optimize the training process and make it more accessible.
That makes sense. It's like any new technology.
Yeah.
It takes time to mature and become more widely adopted.
Right.
But let's talk about the bigger picture for a moment.
Sure.
If Coconut is so good at planning and reasoning under uncertainty,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of real-world applications can we envision for this technology?
The possibilities are truly vast.
Yeah.
Imagine AI systems that can help us design more efficient transportation networks, optimize energy consumption,
Wow.
or even develop personalized medical treatments.
Right.
These are all complex problems that involve a lot of uncertainty
Yeah.
and require strategic planning.
It's like we're giving these AI systems the ability to think strategically, to anticipate potential challenges, and to make more informed decisions.
And it's not just about solving problems. It's about augmenting human intelligence.
Right.
Imagine collaborating with an AI system that can help you explore different possibilities, weigh the pros and cons of various options,
Yeah.
and ultimately make better decisions.
It's like having a super-powered brainstorming partner.
Precisely.
One that can process information and generate insights that we might never have thought of on our own.
And this brings us back to the fundamental question we've been grappling with throughout this deep dive.
Yeah.
What does it mean for LLMs to think?
Right.
Are they truly reasoning,
Right.
Or are they simply mimicking human thought processes in a very sophisticated way?
That's a question that philosophers and scientists have been debating for centuries. And with the emergence of technologies like coconut,
Right.
it's becoming even more relevant and complex.
Yeah. I don't think we have a definitive answer yet.
Yeah.
But what's exciting is that research like this is pushing us to think more deeply about the nature of intelligence, both human and artificial.
Well, this deep dive has certainly given us a lot to ponder.
Yeah,
A huge thank you to our listener for sharing this fascinating research with us.
absolutely.
It's opened up a whole new world of possibilities and challenged our assumptions about what AI can do.
Indeed. And to our listener and to everyone out there exploring the frontiers of knowledge,
Yeah.
keep asking those big questions, keep challenging the status quo, and keep diving deep into the unknown.
We'll be back soon with another mind-bending adventure, so stay tuned, stay curious, and keep exploring.